Today's guest, Franco Noriega, is the founder of Fellini Coffee, one of New York's most viral coffee spots, now with over 6 locations in under 3 years. Franco has an extensive career as previously an Olympic swimmer, model, creative director, chef, singer-songwriter. There's probably a few more that I'm missing there. But Franco, thanks so much for joining the Opening Soon podcast.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're really excited to dive into what you've built with Fellini. But before we do that, I'd love to dive back into where this all started and your childhood. Talk me a little bit through qualifying for the Olympics for 2004 Athens.
I was a professional swimmer for a long time, since I was 12 to like almost 17. I did it, like every day. We trained like hours and hours. And I feel like that, swimming background and being a professional swimmer and a professional athlete really led to many things in my life and the way that I do things in life, right? Like you learn early on discipline, focusing on a goal and making it happen, having a time frame in order to achieve things. So there's a bunch of things that are so important, so fundamental in your life, I guess, as an entrepreneur later on, that I learned when I was a kid. So I went to multiple swimming championships, the World Championships, South American Championships, and
Wow.
eventually the Olympics. I couldn't go to the Olympics because I was injured, but it was a very interesting and formative period in my life.
Yeah. And Franco, you grew up in Peru, is that correct?
Yes, I am Peruvian. My mother's Italian, but I am Peruvian, and I grew up in Peru, and I was in Peru up until when I was 17 years old.
Okay. So I read about that. I believe you qualified for the Olympics, but then you got injured. Talk me through that experience at such a young age. I'm sure that must have been maybe traumatic, maybe something difficult to overcome because you worked so hard for this goal, right?
You work so hard for the goal. I mean, there's a bunch of goals that you have, right? So at the time, I was also, this was kind of like the last, of course, like the biggest goal that you have when you are a professional swimmer. But I guess I was so young that I felt that there was another opportunity coming. So I didn't feel traumatic at all. I just felt like it was an injury. I'll go into the next one. It's just that they happen every 4 years. So
Yeah.
they're not like it's not like so easy that you go next year. But it was good. It was kind of also, when you're an athlete, you love to win, but you also learn how to lose, which is also
Mm,
important in life. And I felt like that this was one of those lessons, right? Like, that you can't have, sometimes you can't have it all, or you can't have things that you really want that you're working for, but then you just move on quickly and you move into the next, goal that you have.
okay. No, that's fascinating. I think people that perform at such elite levels at such a young age, there's probably a lot of lasting lessons that carry throughout the rest of your career. And let's go through a little bit of that. So, what did you do after swimming? It seems like you did some modeling. You were also learning to be a chef and then opened a couple of restaurants. Walk me through the next few years.
So, I mean, the thing with swimming, it is a great sport, of course, but it's more of a sport. It's a discipline, right? It's not like you say, let's go play swimming. You go to swim, right? So you're not playing anything. You're like looking at this black line for hours at a time. So it's almost like meditating, really. There's a bunch of, you're always in your head, you're not talking to anybody. And this goes on for like 3 or 4 or 5 hours a day. So it's like a
Wow.
big part of your day really is being quiet with yourself, with your thoughts. So it's great, but it's also boring. And at the same time, I was like, I've done this for like 5, 6 years. I was tired of it. So at 17, I retired, and I was excited to get out of this sport and also out of Peru. I was lucky enough that when I was a swimmer, almost every month I would be somewhere in the world, right, competing or training or whatever reason. So, from a very early age, I was really outside of my hometown in most of the year. I was, also as a swimmer, you have these exchange programs where you live abroad for certain periods of the year where you train with different teams. And that really was part of my life. So I lived in Brazil, I lived in Mexico, I lived in Argentina, I lived in Miami. So I was always in different places. So when I retired, and then I realized that I was going to be in Peru, I was like, there's no way. I need to figure something out to get out of this because I had been already leaving for so long. So I wanted to be an actor, and I almost like right away I was like, I want to be an actor in New York. So I spoke to my parents, and they were like, look, if you audition in a certain schools and you enter the schools, that's great, then you can do it. But if you don't, enter the schools, then we'll never hear about acting again until you finish your business career in Peru.
Mm.
So I prepared myself, and I was able to I audition to different schools in New York, and I got in, and that really changed my life, right? Because at 18 I moved to New York.
Yeah.
I feel like at 18 I mean you're pretty much grown up, but you're still growing up, right? Like you're still so in half of my like later. I guess, like younger period in my life, I grew up in New York. I've been here for 20 years now. And I felt like I came here super young. Now, my sister's she's 18, and she came to New York when she was 18 also to study at NYU. And I see her and I'm like, wow, that's young. I moved to the city at a very young age. It's different for her because she has her older brother living in New York, but at the time I was alone.
Yeah.
So anyway, I moved to New York, study acting. I went to American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and it was a two or 3 year career. I did a 2 year, and at the end of my 2 year career, I was walking at Soho one day, and I was discovered by this photographer, Mario Testino at the time. He was a huge photographer.
Mm.
He's like, "Hey, are you a model?" And I was like, "Yeah," even though I wasn't. But it's like, can I snap some pictures of you? And I said, yeah, for sure. So we went to the lobby of his hotel. He did a couple pictures, like Polaroids.
Uh-huh.
I don't
Did
think they
you
were.
recognize him when he asked you, or was that after the fact?
No, no, no. I don't think I recognized him, to be honest. I mean,
Okay.
maybe I just, no, I don't think so. I just felt like he was a big photographer or whatever, but I didn't know exactly who he was.
I see.
So he did a couple pictures of me, and next thing I know, 2 weeks later, I am the face of Dolce and Gabbana. We're flying to London, doing this campaign. I
And
signed a contract.
you had never modeled before then.
I mean, I had modeled in Peru,
Okay.
like some like local brands, I guess, but nothing like major, and like
Yeah.
clearly nothing like that to the level of that what I was doing.
Sure.
So that really changed my life. Like that was like a big moment that changed and shifted everything that I was doing because, when this happened, then I was able to sign with an American agency for modeling. I really wanted to stay in New York, and even now, but the time it was super hard. Like you needed to either get married or you needed a working visa, and like
Mm.
as an actor, it's very tough because you need to somebody really needs to believe in your talent, and when you're that age you kind of need to land a role very early on Hollywood or something for them to give you a visa. So there were a couple of things that hurdles I would have need to go through, and this changed. They gave me a green card basically, like because I was a model, and I started working with all the European fashion houses, and I did London, Paris, Milan, Sao Paulo, New York. Like I did the whole thing for like a good 10 years.
Wow.
And it was amazing. It changed my life. It changed my perception. I was exposed to very high levels of taste, which now I translate into my business.
Yeah.
So many things were very formative also at the time. I guess, I also, everything comes full circle, right? But at the time also, like, you need a lot of discipline in the modeling business, even though, it's super glamorous and cool and fun. There's a
Hmm.
bunch of things that, you need to wake up early. You're always on red eyes and you sleep very little and you're always on time changes. And of course you are, partying a lot. So a lot of people lose themselves in this business, right? Like
Ah.
a couple of years go by and the drugs come in and the poor sleep and the temptations and I guess because I was so focused and I was so disciplined already from coming from swimming, where I was also waking up at 4 in the morning, where I was like traveling nonstop, it felt like I was kind of following the same lifestyle, just totally different. There was no sports, involved, but there was, a lot of what I was doing already. So I was able to save some money to kind of like, think what else was I doing. But after 10
Yeah.
years, one thing that happens with modeling is that, with men, there doesn't exist like the male supermodel, right? It's only women supermodels. It's one of the only businesses in the world where women make more money than men.
Hmm.
And even though men work up until they are 40 or 50 or 60 years old, it doesn't happen with women. The career is very long, but the pay is not as high.
It's a low
So I want,
ceiling.
so the ceiling is very low, and it's very, once you do Dolce and Gabbana and Hugo Boss and Calvin Klein and all these big brands, it's almost the same jobs, and you're doing the same, and it doesn't really change. So for, my 20s, it was amazing, but by the time I hit 26, 27, I was like, okay, this is not changing, it's not evolving. I'm doing these great campaigns, but I'm a very ambitious guy, and I wanted more, right? So
Yeah.
I was okay, I need to do something else. So I come from a family of restaurateurs. My parents in Peru owned a chain of bakeries that it eventually sold. And Peru is a very gastronomic, country
Yes.
in Latin America. So we are very much exposed to all these things. So I was like, okay, I need to do something else, and it might have to do with food. So at 26, I went to International Culinary Center. And I studied to be a chef, which is basically a year, right? It was like a fast track program. I never really wanted to be a chef in the kitchen, but I kind of wanted a change of careers, slash, I wanted to understand what being, like a chef meant so that I could actually, manage whoever I was, hiring, let's say. So
Sure.
I went to school. After a year, I graduated and I opened my first restaurant, and that is Baby Brasa. It was a hole in the wall in the Lower East Side on Allen and Delancey. It only
Yep.
seated 8 people in the bar. There were no tables and chairs. It was literally a bar, and it was
Wow.
rotisserie chicken with sides. I was self-funded at the time. I was lucky enough that I invested all of my savings into an Amazon stock that 6 months later quadrupled in like
Wow.
insane. And I had put every single penny that I had in that stock randomly because a friend of mine kind of like in a dinner table said like, hey, Amazon is going to explode, you need to put your money. And I mean, thank God it was great and it was great advice, but it could have also gone south and I could have lost everything. But I was like, I guess naive in the level where I didn't really know investing so well. So I was like, I'm gonna put everything that I have, and it quadrupled. And I'm super
Wow.
happy for that because for that reason I was able to open my first restaurant with debt free, and it was great. I had no investors.
Listeners, this is not financial advice, obviously,
It's not-
but these things can
but
happen too.
But
Yes.
financial advice is for sure invest because
Yes.
you need to invest a portion of your savings in the stock market because it's proven. And even though now, with much more knowledge, I still invest in the stock market and I still am investing in crypto. And you invest in whatever you think is worth, but you definitely need to move your money. It cannot just be sitting in the bank. And that's something that I learned also early on with my parents. Like, they were very much reluctant of having money in the bank, sitting in the bank. It's like if you have 10, 15, 20, 100K in the bank, what is that doing for you? It's doing 1% a year in interest. That's nothing. The stock market minimum gives you 7%. In my case, it gave me 400% return, which is insane. But it could at least it could give you 10%, so you definitely need to move your money. So anyway,
Yeah.
long story short, I opened this business, and it was a success since day one. It was a success for many reasons. Because first of all, because the rent was $3,500, and I found this crazy rent. It was super small, so the overhead wasn't high. Payroll couldn't be that high either because it was a very small location. So for many reasons, it worked, and
And
I was.
how did you get the word out for the restaurant? Was it through your personal social media or was it just from passersby or
I think it was a mix of many things. I was a model at the time, so I had a hookup with a bunch of medium outlets. Like I remember
uh,
GQ and Vanity Fair and Vogue. Like they all covered the story, like model turned chef. at the time it was, I mean, I think now it's a little more normal with social media. At the time they didn't exist, so to have a chef that looked like a model was totally opposed thing, right? Like kind of like images in your mind, because you think of a chef like a guy that's not in shape, maybe a little fat, and like not looking like, doesn't have a six pack, and at the time I was a model, so I had a six pack, and I still do though. But anyway, but it was like kind of that, and that became a story to cover. So we got a lot of medium outlets,
Got
and
it.
at the time social media kind of started. So yeah, we did a combination of everything, and it worked. It just worked. We also had a low price point. Rotisserie chicken was something that people were, kind of like used to, I guess. Like you get rotisserie chickens at Whole Foods, so it's not
Sure.
like an idea that's kind of out there. So anyway, we did that business. I
And
opened
Franco,
that
what year was this? This was
2016.
2016. Okay.
2016, yeah. So anyway, we opened that business, and then it was so good that I was, I need to scale this, and this was the moment where I felt that it was the first time that I really started these conversations with investors, and I was really growing up in my entrepreneurial business, where I needed to fundraise at least $1 million, right? Like it cost me $250,000 to open this first business.
Yeah.
Again, I did it alone, so it was fine. But to go into a second location, into a bigger location, I needed investors. So I started fundraising. And for those of you who are starting to fundraise, or who have fundraised, it is a big process. They say like out of like, the 100%, maybe 1% is going to say yes. So you speak
Yeah.
to 10 people, and maybe not even none of them say yes. You need to speak to like 30, 40, 50 people for one of them to say yes. And it was my experience at the time. I spoke to so many people, and everybody tells you like, I love your idea, it's great, but when you say, okay, let's deposit the money, then something happens. They needed the money for something else, somebody died, they're moving countries, like whatever, it's always an excuse. But I was able to find a group who fundraised, who basically invested on this idea to make Baby Brasa bigger. So I fundraised half of it. I think it was like 500, $600,000. The rest I put myself, and we went into the second location. It was a much bigger location on the corner of 7th Avenue South and Perry in the West Village.
Okay.
It sat like 120 people. So we went
Wow.
from 8 seats to 100 seats, in a second location. And these are things that I mean, I wouldn't do ever again. I was also naive. So I thought that, maybe because I was operating and it felt so easy and breezy, then this was going to be the same. But it's not the same, because you're going from $3,500 to $35,000 in rent, and
Whoa.
plus property taxes, plus a crew of 8 or 10 people just to turn the lights on and make the restaurant function. So like there were so many things, and I scaled the concept from rotisserie chicken to rotisserie chicken, but it didn't translate as well from the Lower East Side to the West Village, because the West Village is a more high net worth neighborhood, and they are not willing to eat chicken every day. So I needed to now bring fish and steak and vegan proteins, and so there was a bunch of things, and it was a very hard learning curve. I almost went down a couple of times throughout my experience of those 8 years, and I was lucky enough that eventually I was able to switch the business, and I went to Peruvian food. But a couple things happened during this journey. So my idea always was to open a chain. I always wanted to scale the business to make it a chain. And scaling Peruvian food was almost impossible. And scaling a restaurant that big was almost impossible, because it's too big. I mean, there's a bunch of people that do it. There's Boucherie, this French place that has
Sure.
multiple locations. There's, of course, incredible Tao Group that has a bunch of locations, and they do. So there's people that do it. But in my experience, it was a lot more difficult. And I felt that I was almost pushing so hard just for this business to happen.
And Franco, from going from, the 8-seater to the 120-seater, what gave you that confidence? Was it, I mean, it couldn't have just been complete naivete. It must have been there was good business coming into the Lower East Side. and you thought you could replicate that on the West Village. Was that it, or that's a
Yeah,
big
I
jump?
was naive to be honest. I was
It's just
naive
naive. Okay,
and kind of like not like knowledgeable enough because I wouldn't do the jump knowing what I don't know now to that level. Like it's just make no sense. But
got it.
I felt narcissistic, I guess, at the time. I felt I could do it, and as an entrepreneur, and I think it's a key ingredient that you need to have in order to make it is that almost this kind of like delusional way of thinking that everything will work out, right? And that's why you risk it all. That's why you risk all of your savings and you open a restaurant or you open a cafe or you open whatever it is you're going to open, because you go into the business thinking that it will change your life. And the funny thing is, most, I think the statistics is like 80% of the time it doesn't work. Only 20% works for entrepreneurs. But we have this feeling, and I feel like it's such a key ingredient because it's impossible to be and to risk it all and go full at it if you don't have this delusional way of thinking that it's going to work out. So of course I had it and I went for it, and it worked out eventually, right? But I had very tough moments where I was about to go bankrupt. I was about to close. I was like, I've had so many weeks where I had no money for payroll on Friday and Monday I had to pay, and I was praying to the gods for the weekend be like a good sale so that I could actually pay my employees. And I've had many of those situations throughout my entrepreneurial career. But then eventually the pandemic happened, and it was the best thing that happened to us.
Wow.
We were we are in the West Village, so we had this crazy frontage, 50 feet of frontage, which at the time meant nothing. But when the pandemic came, it changed everything because you could do outdoor seating, and you couldn't do indoor seating. And the minute that they said that you could put tables and chairs outside, we could do 150 people outside. So we basically
Wow.
had a bigger restaurant outside inside than inside. And on top of that, everything was closed because most of entrepreneurs didn't react quickly enough, and not everybody had a frontage, not everybody had the outdoors. So the minute they say yes, we put tables, chairs, palm trees, and we brought this sensation of the beach and dreaminess and kind of ludic restaurant outside of New York, and it worked, and we were beyond successful. We made more money than we ever did in the 5 years of being a business owners. We were open for like 2.5 years after the pandemic, and it was great. It was a very
Wow.
good time, while most of the restaurants were suffering and were closing. We were having like the best numbers, right? Also at the pandemic, when before the whole outdoors, we also had a catering business, so we reacted quickly and we were serving all of the hospitals in New York.
Mm.
We were doing burgers and wings, nothing that had to do with our type of cuisine, but it was like reacting to see where the business was. And it's funny because in moments of crisis, and I feel like this happens to all entrepreneurs, whatever crisis, you're always living in some type of crisis.
Yep.
You need to react quickly and understand where is the money moving, right? Because the money's always there. Money doesn't stop. It's just like sometimes it changes forms and it changes ways of coming in.
Mm.
And for us, we saw that, there was like, the demand wasn't in restaurants, but the demand was in hospitals because you had 20-hour shifts for doctors that needed to be fed. So we partnered with City Harvest. We partnered with God's Love We Deliver so that we can actually start putting meals away. And then eventually we opened the outdoor. So we had the catering business plus the outdoor business. So we were like banking a lot.
Mm.
And this
How
takes
are
me to.
how are you all able to be so nimble? Were you just, driving the driving force behind all of this and just figuring out like what's going on? We're in survival mode, the pandemic's going on, and we need to figure out how to, make money to survive or
Yeah, of course. I mean, we were always looking at ways to look. I mean, of course, you need to still maintain your business, and we refuse to give up.
Mm,
We refused to say, this is it, we're gonna quit, we're closing. No, we were like, no, we need to figure it out. So every day, of course, we had crazy stressful days, but the moment that we saw some light at the end of the tunnel, we were going to take that route, and hopefully that's going to lead us, to a bigger and broader and sunnier day. And it did in the pandemic moment with catering meals. It did, and then eventually with the outdoors.
got it.
And that really took me to Fellini, which is a crazy transition. We were so busy with the restaurant that we ran out of tables and chairs on the weekends. So my neighbor was a pizza place. He'd been open for 35 years. Like, imagine a pizza by the slice, kind of like old and like never renovated New York style pizza. And I would cross the street and be like, "Hey, I need tables and chairs," and he would rent chairs for $5 and tables for 15. So I would basically rent his tables and chairs for a couple hours whenever I had rushes, and just literally give them back whenever I was done. And this happened every Saturday and Sunday.
Huh.
So we developed a relationship aside of, being neighbors for like 8 years. We developed this relationship where we knew each other. And eventually, he said, "You're doing so well. Why don't you take over?" I was like, "Take over what?" Like, "This pizza shop, maybe you need it." So I was like, okay, this kind of like, I kept this in my mind. And with the catering business that we had, we were growing so much that I needed an extra kitchen. And, I could have done a ghost kitchen in Times Square, which is what I have now. But at the time, I didn't want to go to Times Square and also have the catering coming out of the West Village, because I had to control two separate operations.
Yeah.
So I eventually I bought the restaurant across the street, and bought his lease out, and operated this pizza shop. But I was using the kitchen, so I had Baby Brass across the street, which was this nicer restaurant, and then the pizza shop across the street, which I was basically selling the same style pizza that he had, but I was using the kitchen for catering. And
Mm.
then one day, I was, getting the trash out, and then I go where they store the trash for 35 years, and I realized that it was a window, and it was a corner of the building, and it was this window on Perry and Seventh, and I was like, "There's no way that this is a window, and this is where they store trash." I said, "This has to be whatever but a trash storage. This needs to be a business. Like, I need to do some type of sell whatever, sell charms, sell juices, sell something, because it's such good exposure. It's a corner of the building. It's a beautiful window, and I can put this trash in the back of the building, and this could be something else." So I was starting to thinking about what this could be. At the time, I didn't drink coffee. Now it's almost every day. But
At the time, you didn't drink coffee.
I didn't drink coffee. I didn't drink coffee in New York
Wow.
for like literally 30, 18 years before I opened Fellini. And so I didn't think of Fellini I didn't think of Fellini as an option. So I started thinking maybe juices, maybe I could do a juice bar. But I need a lot more equipment. So I was like, the only thing that fits is a coffee machine. So I'm going to do coffee. So I got together with a couple of people that were very good. We started doing some blends. I had no idea. For me, coffee always tasted bitter and horrible. So I had no idea what is good coffee and what's bad coffee. So I got together with some very good professionals, and we opened Fellini. I decided to
But
open
Franco,
this.
you're also half Italian.
Yeah, I'm also half Italian.
And you didn't drink coffee. That's
I didn't
incredible.
drink coffee. Yeah, I don't know. I almost felt like I went, against. I mean, I did drink green tea a lot, but
Hmm.
I don't know why. I felt like New York run on coffee, and it almost made me pride that I said I don't drink coffee. It's so
Sure.
dumb, but I didn't, and it was cool, and I didn't really like the taste, because it really is an acquired taste.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it, and whatever. So I decided to open Fellini, and because it was so small, it's only 15 square feet. It's the smallest coffee shop in the city. I decided to do it luxury. I was like, I'm gonna go all at it. I'm gonna do wood. I'm gonna do like marble. I'm gonna do something like incredible. And wait a second. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
And it was like it was super luxury, but it didn't cost me a lot of money because it was so small.
Yeah.
So long story short, that's how Fellini started, and
And
then the Fellini evolution has been crazy.
And sorry, the Fellini, you noticed that because you bought the lease out of what is like Bar Fellini now? Was that the pizza restaurant that you're talking about?
No, the pizza place was called Rivoli. Rivoli.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that
Had
was like close by but separate from the building where the 7th Street Fellini is?
Wait. What's your question? If What's your
My
question again?
question was the pizza restaurant that you took over, where was that located?
It is literally across the street from Baby Rasa on the corner of 7th and Perry. So I was on 7th and Perry, but on the other side of the street, and then I took the corner across the street on 7th and Perry.
Oh,
It's just that this restaurant, because it's at the corner, the whole restaurant is the corner, but the actual point, the little, like the actual corner, right, was trash.
they
And
used to put trash there?
they had trash storage for 30 years.
Wow, that's
And when I
incredible.
when I started operating, because I took over the restaurant and I didn't care about the business, it was basically petty cash to have a pizza place, but I was really in it for the catering business side of it. I was using the kitchen. Then I didn't really care so much about the looks, the place, whatever. I just painted it, did a paint job, and kept operating the way it was. But then one day I actually went to the trash storage, and when I saw it, I was like, "There's no way that this could be trash, like
Yeah,
trash.
I
This is
see.
like, there's no
Okay.
way." So anyway, this is how
Yeah.
we started.
Okay. And
Um,
then for listeners who haven't been to Fellini in the West Village, it's literally a triangle that's, as Franco mentioned, 15 feet with, I believe there's a window on like, facing the 7th Ave, and it's connected to this larger building, but it's one of the most viral places to get coffee, and everyone is always there.
yeah, it has two windows actually on both
Or
sides,
two
and it's
windows, yeah.
really narrow. You can only fit two people inside, right? The two baristas. Um, and it's funny because the concept of Fellini with having a window came about. I mean, now we have windows at all of our locations, but the reason why it became so much of the DNA of Fellini is because we only could serve coffee through a window because there's no way for people to come inside. So we needed to break that wall, make it a window, and that's how we started, serving coffee.
And Franco, for like the branding of Fellini, the name, the concept, and all this build out, how long did it take you from when you're like, hey, this should be something different to opening?
It was pretty quick. So the reason why it's called Fellini is because my grandmother, she's Italian. She wanted to be an actress. Reason why I also wanted to be an actor. She always talked about like how she would have been the next Sophia Loren, but she wasn't because her grandparents didn't want to. And it's funny because when she was a kid, like in 19 years old or 18, she was from Milan. She went to Rome to do a casting for Federico Fellini, which is this Italian director for La Dolce Vita. And he did the cast. She did the casting. She was selected. She went back home, so excited. And they were like, "No, that job. Being an actress at the time, she's like, it was viewed as like basically very low for prostitutes. They're like, you are not gonna get out of this house until you get married." So she got
Mm.
married. Eventually, she left home, but she had this frustrated dream of being an actress, and we have at all of our locations my grandmother's picture for the casting of Fellini. So
Oh, that's
she's
your
president.
grandmother. I see.
That's my grandmother.
And then
Uh,
that you have your famous drink, La Dolce Vita.
La Dolce Vita, exactly. We have the Dolce Vita drink, which is basically like a caramel latte.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how Fellini started. So it was quick. It took us maybe like 2 months because it was so
Okay.
small. So there was
Yeah.
not a lot of construction to do. And then it was such a success that we opened 2 or 3 months after we opened our Soho location. Then Soho was extremely successful. 3 months after we opened Chelsea. Chelsea was great. That's when the brand started getting, kind of New York recognition that we are not only in one location and maybe near, West Village, Soho, then Chelsea. Then we renovated Rivoli, this like a not nice pizza place, into Fellini. So that was like that's our biggest location in the West Village. Now it's all of it. It's Fellini.
Yeah.
And that's actually the only restaurant that we have because it's a full kitchen. So then we did West Village. Then we opened Upper West Side. Then we opened Meatpacking, and we just opened last week the Upper East Side. So every 3 months we're opening a new Fellini location.
That's incredible. And we love supporting y'all with your mirrored signs. So
Yes, and we love
we
it because people love it, and it's like such a viral moment.
we always see the people taking photos, which is great. How what was the rent for the 15 square feet, Fellini?
It was nothing crazy, but I don't want to say how much, but it was like not that expensive, but also not cheap because it's the West Village.
Okay. Because I know, I don't know if you know this photo spot called Memento, a few blocks down.
Oh
There's
no.
also a tiny space, also
Yeah.
on 7th Avenue.
Oh
We
yeah, yeah,
interviewed
yeah.
her. Yeah.
Okay.
Her space is also 15 square feet, and she's paying, I think, 5 or 6 thousand for her space.
Oh wait, sorry, no. How much was the space for the corner? It was mine. This
Oh, that,
was
oh, because
part
that
of
was a
the
trash
building.
room.
Yeah, it was like that's the thing. I was taking trash outside, and I just replaced the trash for a coffee shop.
Oh, yeah. Okay, because yeah, no one owned it before. That's
Yeah.
true.
That's why
Okay.
it's like such a misused space basically because exactly I know exactly what you're talking about memento and yeah it's a West Village. I mean, and everything can be used. New York is the most, I mean, insane place for real estate, right? Anything could be a moment, either a photo moment, a selling moment. So
Yeah.
having it trash is like such a misuse of space.
So for brick and mortar owners out there, wherever you're storing your trash, maybe there's something you could do
Totally,
with it.
totally.
Um, for Fellini, now that you've had 6 locations, how was this funded? Was it all self-funded? Did you raise funding for Fellini? And how are you balancing that with your other endeavors, or is Fellini your sole focus now?
Now, Feliz is my sole focus. So basically, I closed Baby Brasa,
Okay.
installed that lease. We transfer. I still have the catering business, so I have a couple of ghost kitchens on Times Square. So the catering business is still going, and then once I realized that Fellini was really the scalable business that I was always looking for, I was like this Baby Brasa thing. It had its run. The pandemic was amazing, but it's not scalable, and I didn't want to. It felt like it needed a lot of my attention, so I let that go, and now I'm only focused on Fellini. I have no partners or investors. I'm bootlegging myself for
Wow.
every location that we open. It was very hard at on the second or third location, third and fourth. Between the second and fourth location, it was very hard to bootleg because you only count with one or two cash flow, kind of like incomes.
Yeah.
But and at the time, it's funny how things change, quickly for entrepreneurs all the time. But at the time, I was looking for investors, right? I was looking to raise some money in order to keep growing with Fellini. And funny enough, I opened the fourth location and I had some people aligned, and I was like, you know what, maybe I could do this on my own. And I did the fifth location, and then now we're on our seventh location, and it's feeling more and more easier to do because now I have seven different incomes that could build the next location, and the more I did like this very kind of like interesting cash flow metrics between when do I how many locations could I open while more locations come into the equation, and seven is kind of like this moment where everything changes, and then I don't need ever to think about raising capital or even going into debt. So we are at the moment right now we're opening our next location on 24th and Park Avenue. That's our Flatiron location. We'll probably be
Nice.
open hopefully by the end of May. And yeah, so yeah, I'm happy that I don't need to deal with investors because they're the pain in the ass. And
Because you had to deal with it for Baby
of
Rasa,
course,
where you,
I
okay.
had, and that was also a huge learning curve in my life. I eventually bought all my investors and partners out of that business, but it was a struggle because as an entrepreneur, you make decisions based on the health of the business, and you are the only one that knows what's going on. And investors are just looking at numbers, and they don't care about excuses or things. And so, of course, I always say, like, if you are able to own your own business without having investors, that is like the dream,
Yeah.
really. But if that's not the case, because of course you need to fundraise, then of course you need to do it, and that's totally fine also.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have no investors now.
And Franco, I mean, there's so many coffee shops in New York City. What do you think? it makes Fellini stand out, or how are you able to separate from the noise? Is it the branding? Is it the marketing? Is it you? Is it the combination? Like, what do you think is driving the success of Fellini?
Look, I don't think I honestly don't think that there's anything in the market that looks like Fellini. Coffee is very utilitarian, right? You come in, it's normally a very simple, minimal everything, like minimal wall, minimal design, very like, you come in, you get your coffee, you get out. Fellini is totally different. It is totally designed. It feels like you're in Milano. We invest a crazy amount of money on each store. So they cost a lot of money to build. We use Arabascato marble. We use wood paneling for all of the store.
Mm,
We use Murano chandeliers that come from Italy, and it just feels that it is a totally different feeling. It almost it's too expensive for coffee. So when you walk into a Fellini, you think that wow, like you're spending. You could spend a lot of money, but then you realize that you can get an espresso for $4. So you can get this lifestyle that is very opulent, let's say, that has nothing to do with coffee, because coffee is the opposite, and you can be part of this dolce vita lifestyle for, like, an espresso or a cappuccino for $6. Of course you can spend a lot more money. We have signatures that are $12, and there's food and there's a bunch of components, so like the average ticket is clearly not $4, but you can experience that for $4. And I think that really sets us apart, because we are comparable to, let's say, New York restaurants, like, let's say, a San Ambrose or a Cipriani, but these are restaurants. We are a
yeah.
coffee chain. So we're giving you all of this, let's say, expensive vibe that you would spend 80 to $100 to sit in these places, and you are spending a fraction of that. So I feel like, we are one of the first luxury coffees in New York.
Yeah. I always love getting iced Americanos, and this is not just to pull your leg, but Fellini iced Americanos are one of my favorites in the
Oh,
city. It's
amazing.
it's delicious.
We take pride on our coffee blend. We also think, of course, the product is incredible. I mean, we have. I've now become a coffee connoisseur. I drink four coffees a day, and I'm always drinking coffees at different locations, not only Fellini but different brands, because I need to know how good the Fellini coffee is. And I truly believe that we have a very good coffee. So, of course, having a good product is a big part of it. And there's also a luck component, right? With every entrepreneur, it's being at the right time at the right place. Having I was reading something interesting at a business page on Instagram, and it said that investors are now not only looking at how many products you sell when they want to invest in your business, because eventually I want out of this, like, not far away from where I am. I want to exit the business, so I'm prepping myself for that. But I was reading that investors are not only looking to see how much product you sell now, but
Hmm.
if the demand can sustain in time, right? Similar to what
Sure.
happened with Labubus, right? Everybody wanted a Labubu. They were selling like crazy, these charms that people put on
Yeah.
their
Yeah. Yeah.
on
No,
their
I have one.
Right, right. But probably you have one, but I don't know if you're buying another one anytime
No.
soon, right? You
No,
just
I
bought
waited
it.
2 hours and I said this is the worst decision I've ever had, and
Right. But at the time it made sense because everybody had it, you had the hype. So it's like, how much can you sustain? And I really think that, the brand that we've created, it's only 2 years old, but it feels that it's been forever. Like, it's not like something that feels new. It's something that feels like it could, whenever you walk into a Fellini. I mean, this happened to me last week whenever we opened the Fellini in the Upper East Side. We had 2 days opening. And I was sitting there having brunch, and I was like, it's incredible. This feels like this has been here for years.
hmm.
And it just has 2 days. But the feeling, the textures, the way that people were sitting and enjoying, and just the vibe that Fellini gives you, it almost feels like a vintage coffee shop, but it's totally new. I mean, it had like hours of opening. So I
Wow.
think that is something that you need to strive for as an entrepreneur, to really, make sure that, whatever you're building is not a hype that is a moment, but it's something that can translate in time, and that, the demand will be sustained throughout a good period of time.
Yeah. And Franco, talk to me a little bit about the future because you mentioned an exit. How many stores do you want to get to before potentially exiting the business? And who are the potential acquirers for something like Fellini?
Well, I'm starting to have these conversations with some VCs. I mean, we are, the idea is we're opening three more locations this year
Yeah.
and maybe four next year. So by then, we should be at around 13 or 14 locations. And that could be our first exit, right? I mean, it's not going to be a full exit immediately, but that could be our first exit. Um, and also getting some money. So at this point, I am, risking all of my capital because even though
Yeah.
I am growing, my accounts are very low because, all of the money is being reinvested in the business. And because Fellini is extremely expensive, it doesn't, it's not, cheap to build. So eventually, I feel like by next year, we should have our first exit where I get to keep a good amount of money and use the rest of the money to bring us to 30 or 40 locations.
Hmm.
And that should value the company around 150 million. And then maybe I could do a second exit where I am out of the operation, keep a percentage for future growth,
Yeah.
but, like cash out in a way and be out.
Yeah. And then for listeners, sort of what Franco's talking about is raising both primary capital and secondary capital. Secondary buying out some of the existing shareholders, which is I think just you, Franco, right now. Primary capital is additive to the company to fuel the expansion, and this is very common in venture capital and fundraising. But no, that's incredible. So is the model that maybe you are looking to sort of similar to like a blue bottle? Where you tried to expand to hundreds of locations, throughout the U.S. and even internationally.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a big opportunity in the market, and I mean, we get so many requests to open Fellini almost all over the world, Japan, France, like Spain. Like, there's so many people that they're telling me, I see a Fellini working so well in this market, and
Yeah,
I do think Fellini works well in a lot of markets. I really do believe that. So I feel like the opportunity is incredible. Scaling coffee is extremely easy compared to Peruvian food because I don't need to teach you what ceviche is, but you need coffee. I don't need to tell you like how great coffee is. Like, even if it's not that great, which is not the case of Fellini, but even if the coffee is not that great, you still need it for the energy. So you're gonna get it,
yep.
conveniently wherever you are located. Like, for instance, I live on 27th and 7th Avenue, and I have a Fellini on 22nd and 8th Avenue, so just like 5 blocks away. And it's my business, right? And I go to that location a lot for breakfast. But whenever I'm on the run, I go to Variety that's on the corner of 26th and 7th because it's 2 blocks away and it's 2 blocks shorter than going to Fellini. So this kind of teaches you like how for coffee you're not really willing to walk 4 or 5 blocks. You're just going to the closest coffee shop around you. And this also proves the Starbucks theory that they could open a coffee shop every 3 blocks because people walk a max of 3 blocks for coffee. And that's
I'm
what
on
we
31st and 6th, and we have a Starbucks on one corner, and the same block on the opposite end, there's another Starbucks on
right.
32nd.
And it makes sense because the people, I mean, sometimes you don't even walk up like a block, like if you have a Starbucks there, you're going to go to that location. And the demand is so big on some pockets in New York that you could have, I mean, multiple, coffee shops, and they are so busy at the same time. So they all are doing great. Of course, I
Yeah.
also saw this metric a couple of days ago that out of 100 coffee shops, only 20% keep open the first year, which is also crazy because it's a
Wow.
very small percentage. And if you think about, there's so many coffee shops that
Yes.
it also makes sense because the competition is incredible. I mean, when there are in our Soho location, I remember showing my dad our Soho location. I was so excited. It was our second location. He comes to see it, and we were walking the neighborhood like literally 2 blocks around, and he's like, Franco, are you sure? Did you sign the lease? And I'm like, yeah. I was like so excited. He's like, well, because since you sign it, whatever, but There's 13 coffee shops on a 2 block radius.
Oh
13. I said, are
man.
you sure this is a good place to open a coffee shop? Now I love competition because I feel like we kill it, and we almost are uncomparable. And if I'm selling you a $4 cappuccino, which a $4 espresso, which is the same price as the other per people, you're gonna come to Fellini because we're gonna offer you a lot more. So the more coffee shops, the better for me.
Yeah.
But of course, it's a big thing, because it's the competition is real, more in New York.
Yeah. And Franco, I want to also touch briefly on your team to be able to support these types of expansion and sales. Outside of the people working at the actual locations, do you have a corporate team that's helping think through the strategy and growth and marketing with you as well?
Yeah, I mean, we have, of course, we have, the locations run on it by itself and having managers and all that. But we do have like a higher level team where, we're constantly brainstorming and trying more and more to make the stores self-sufficient. We started using AI in most of our processes and systems, and that is helping us a lot because it's giving us the ability to hire people that are not so expensive
Hmm.
to run the locations because we're able to give them the information that they need as opposed to making them think with us. We're trying to making them think less, and we are the ones at higher level who are thinking a lot more.
And you're doing AI, or you're using AI to help with that process?
We're using AI for most of our inventories, for most of our, how we control products, and we have a central kitchen for all the Fellinis because we don't have back of the house at any of the locations. So before we used the managers' intel and capabilities to tell us what they needed. Now
Hmm.
we're sending them what they need based on sales, based on
And data.
reports, and that is a lot of it has to do with AI. Of course, we still need the support of the stores, but that is giving us the capability not to hire four managers, but just to hire one manager, and that is saving us a tremendous amount of money in payroll.
Wow.
Because we now we pay by the hour as opposed to pay a salary. So like, there's a bunch of things that AI is doing for us. I'm obsessed with AI. I love it,
Same here.
and I'm happy that we are now, I mean, I was benefiting on my private and personal life, but now I'm benefiting from it on my, professional life with Fellini, and I'm seeing how that's saving us money. So I love it.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that anecdote because we also leverage AI a lot in our businesses, and it's been an incredible leverage tool to
Totally.
do things a lot more efficiently. Awesome. Well, Franco, I know we're wrapping up on time here, but I wanted to end this with looking back on your journey over the last 10, 20 years, even when you were swimming to opening Baby Brasa to now 6 locations at Fellini, having the insight that you have now. Is there anything that you would have changed if you could go back in time?
If anything that we would change, I wish I discovered coffee sooner. But
Funny stories. I also didn't drink coffee till I was over 30 as
oh,
well.
no way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We share that similarity.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't think I would change anything, to be honest. I think, like, similar to what Steve Jobs says, like, you connect the dots, right? And then eventually everything, I also think that, maybe if I discovered coffee sooner, I wouldn't have done what I'm doing. And Baby Brasa was also a big university kind of for me and into making things happen. So I think like things happen for a reason, and you just have to roll with the punches and and keep going. So I'm very excited where I'm right now. I feel like I have a key, and this is like important for. I mean, it's exciting for. I love to grow, so it's exciting to know that I have a product that is scalable enough, and it's working. So I'm excited for where we are right now and for the future, of course.
Awesome. All right, Franco. Well, if people want to follow along the journey or reach out, what is the best way for them to do so?
Well, you can definitely, follow Fellini. It's at Fellini Coffee on Instagram, and my personal handle is at Franco Norhal, Norhal. I post like stuff constantly about our new openings and a little bit of the journey.
Yeah.
of like what Fellini looks like before and after. It takes us a month and a half to open a new store, so you see like the change is pretty quick along those 6 weeks. So it's a fun moment.
Very cool. Well, we'll include links to those in the show notes. And I also know that you have 1 million followers on
Yeah.
Instagram. How did you do that?
I mean, I don't know how, but I guess it had to do with modeling, translated into being a chef, into living in New York, and yeah, I mean, it's all connected in a way.
It's incredible. Awesome. Well, Franco, this has been a lot of fun. I love Fellini and will be stopping by frequently as I have been. So appreciate you opening a lot more locations so I don't have to walk as far.
Thank you, Alan. It's a
All
pleasure. Thank
right.
you so much, everybody, listening. I see you.